Who are we? Who is God? And why did he create us? And do we have a purpose here? I've always wondered those things. And at some points in my life, I actually thought I knew I had all the answers, believe it or not. And then one day I woke up and I decided to investigate clearly, deeply, everything that I had ever had faith in. It happened on January 6th when I saw the country fall apart in front of me. I never looked to prove the Bible wrong or any of that. I was just trying to figure out where I had gone wrong because nothing in my life added up. And I kept working and trying and loving and praying and studying scriptures, and things just weren't changing. At any rate, I started an investigation. One of the people, I went through language. I started studying language and wanted to learn Hebrew, and then found the Paleo-Hebrew, and then found the cuneiform, or however everybody says it different, but the cuneiform writing, same thing like the hieroglyphics in Egypt. And there's still thousands of cuneiform ledgers that have never been deciphered that could tell us a lot. But, like all good things that go to the Smithsonian or Washington, they're usually never seen again. So I ran into Vogt about language, Hebrew language, and started reading his material, and I was blown away. At the same time, I had found Randall Carlson, and I was looking into sacred geometry and understanding that, and it was blowing my mind. So I just picked up the phone and called Doug Vogt, and what do you know, he lived locally. So I ended up meeting with him and becoming friends, and he taught me a lot, and I'm very thankful for it. His books were difficult for me to read, and I've read all of them several times, and I'm going to be reporting to you today from the theory of multidimensional reality. One of his, not his first, he wrote, I think in 1977, Reality Revealed, at which time he and his partner felt like they had a definite reason to explore our universe as an informational reality. There were so many things in science that had never been determined, and that was frustrating, and nothing seemed to be right. Even the theories that we use to look at science were all incorrect. So Doug set out to find out. Now, he was a Jewish man steeped in Jewish religion and their practices, their history, their ways, had read the Torah many times and understood all that, which was a huge help. He had also been involved as a photographer in a couple of the wars, and had done a lot of research into pyramids, so he had a really strong background for having questions that no one seemed to be able to answer. So he looked at what is the philosophy around science. In other words, what are the basic things that we believe? If you have a religious or biblical philosophy, then you believe that there's a benevolent God that created a man and then a woman and told them to reproduce, right? And that was like 6,000 years ago, and everything revolves around that foundational structure. So you build on that. You believe that. Everything else you believe or question has to be able to sit on that well. So, homosexuality, based on the Bible's been changed a million times, but that's an exaggeration. But based on the current, the Bible looks as though it doesn't condone that. And so if you're looking at maybe a family member that's a homosexual, you're going to say, that's sinful, that's no good. Do you see what I mean? Whereas if you didn't have that philosophy, maybe you had a different philosophy, an information philosophy, or if you had a liberal philosophy, you would say, well, whatever you want to do is fine, as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. So everything in life gets measured based on our philosophy. And it's all important to understand our personal philosophy about who we are, where we are, and what we are is critical in everything we do. The world today is based on a matter philosophy. So everything is hard. This is a cup because it's matter and I can touch it and feel it, and it's hard, right? And I'm a person with biology that you can touch and feel, and I'm hard sometimes. And so the philosophy of the world we live in is everything. So many people have tried to explain the answers to those questions. Who is God? Religion wants you to believe that there's some benevolent Santa Claus in the sky because that's convenient for society. But what's the truth of it all? In my 72 years, I haven't seen any great benevolence. I've seen a lot of beauty. I've seen a lot of passion that has the power to change people. I've seen wonderful connections and things, mysteries, and so many different things. But I've also seen some great tragedies and losses and grief and injustices. And so, no, I don't believe that there's any great benevolent creator. I do believe there must have been a beginning of everything, and a big bang seems very simplistic, and I don't know how that would explain consciousness. Although consciousness seems to have evolved, if you think about who we are today, my grandma wouldn't even believe some of the things today. And she died in 91. And think back about that. At the same time, I now believe that it's pretty easy to prove that there have been many Earth ages before this one, and that we cycle. The Earth cycles, people cycle, animals cycle, trees cycle, time cycles, everything cycles. And so maybe that's the philosophy, is that we're all on cycles in a cycle, of a cycle. So Doug decided that no one understood reality, and that was a big problem. And so he said, let's look at things differently, and let's decide that we're a computer system, that somewhere up there is the big server, the big controller, where all the information is stored. And that computer works faster than this computer down here. And it stores information, maybe in the Oort cloud, who knows, or maybe in the moon. But it stores information, and that information is used, or maybe in the sun, since the sun has the ability to change who we are. But that information is used to create us. The trees, that's how they know to grow another leaf and to reproduce after their kind. And then there's something interesting, because you look at the little bug-like amoebas, the tardigrades, and they, as small as they are, without brains and organs, they have purpose and will hunt to become more. So there's some kind of song written in each of us, in everything. Why does one leaf get eaten by all the bugs, like that one, and the others are left alone? Why? What explains that? Did the bug have different information, or was there different information in the leaf? Or was the leaf maybe changed by something? And do you treat the leaf or the tree? In our world today, in this matter world that we've become accustomed, we treat the pain. We treat the finger if the finger hurts. We treat the heart if it's not working right. And yet, we're a cycle, constantly cycling in us, cells rebuilding, processing. Shouldn't we treat the whole thing? And when you look at the philosophy that our leaders used, something must have been wrong. They had a philosophy of seeing the matter in the world and being able to use it for the benefit of mankind, but they never thought it through. What if they plundered it and used it, and the entire cycle of our universe became sick? And so are we sick people in a sick universe? And why are we sick if we're information? Maybe we don't know how to use the information, or maybe we've been taught wrong. Maybe we haven't figured out how to live in a world where matter is really thought. And thought is created by us. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? It is a deep, deep subject. The matter-oriented theory of existence that we have today, Doug says, was based on Aristotle. Plato and Aristotle were different. Plato believed that you had form and the energy for the form. And Aristotle believed that the energy and the form were one. So if Plato is correct, then we have a body and we have the energy for the body. If Aristotle is correct, then we are an energetic body that's all combined. But here's the problem. Aristotle probably didn't exist. And I think, let me think. I think he wrote something about that in here. Darn it, I don't see it. I know he had something in here about, oh, here, in a part, what, okay, this is good, so I'm glad I found this. He was thinking about how did we get off with the wrong philosophy or with an ineffective philosophy in life, that we live in a matter world and everything was matter. How much can you get? How much can you hold? How much can you buy? That kind of stuff. So I'm going to read from his work. The matter-oriented theory of the existence is very old in origin. They were first expressed by the Greek atomist Leucippus 440 BCE and Democritus 420 BCE. They taught that nothing exists except atoms and the great void. In Plato's book, The Sophist, he says, some of them, meaning the atomists, drag down everything from heaven and the invisible to earth, actually grasping rocks and trees with their hands, for they lay their hands on all such things and maintain stoutly that that alone exists, which can be touched and handled. For they define existence and body or matter as identical. And if anyone says that there's anything else which has no body that exists, then they despise him and will not listen to any other theory than their own. So either there's a rock and this rock has consciousness, or there's nothing. And what Aristotle said is this is both. And Plato is saying no, this is the matter. The consciousness is over and above and around and outside and filters through and in the matter, right? So this sounds exactly what goes on in academia today. Non-matter oriented theories of existence, non-matter meaning consciousness, existed at the time of Plato and before him. The Jewish concept of the universe, Doug believes to be correct, which is, as long as God thinks the universe, it is. In other words, as long as there is that construct, thinking, we are. And that's what manifestation is about, is that as long as we think it, we create it. It has to be thought. And that the thought is where the power lies. But the thought has to be transmitted in information. The problem the Jews had at that time was that it was difficult to find an analogy to help them describe what they believed. Plato used the cave analogy to try and explain existence and the universe. And now I said, let me show you in a figure how far our nature is enlightened and unenlightened. Behold, human beings living in an underground den, which has a mouth open toward the light and reaching all along the den. Here they have been from their childhood and have had their legs and necks chained so they cannot move and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains from turning around their heads. Above and behind them is a fire blazing at a distance, and between the fire and the prisoner there is a raised way. And you will see, if you look, a low wall built along the way, like the screen which marionette players have in front of them, over which they show the puppets. I see. And do you see, I said, men passing along the wall carrying all sorts of vessels and statues and figures of animals made of wood and stone and various materials which appear over the wall? Some of them are talking, others silent. You have shown me a strange image, and they are strange prisoners. Like ourselves, I replied, and they see only their own shadows or the shadows of one another, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave. So what Plato is saying is that what we receive, what we believe to be true, is based on the shadows we see. In other words, we see something and we believe that what that is what we see alone. We don't see the life in it. We don't see the consciousness. We don't see the cycle of it. We don't see what it needs to be that. We don't see where it came from. We just see that, and we take it for granted. I know this sounds confusing, doesn't it? So when did we get kind of in this mess of looking at life or having this theology that doesn't work or isn't effective for explaining what we experience and see? So Doug says he feels it's important for people to understand why the science was changed after the 2nd century and who did it. And only a few scholars in Roman history know this information. The Catholic Church taught the philosophies of Aristotle from the 2nd to the 18th century. His works were almost elevated to the status of holy. The writings attributed to Aristotle are the origin for the current-day matter-oriented theory of existence. The academic narrative for the history of Aristotle was that he was a student of Plato, and that he took over Plato's school when Plato died. But in all of Plato's writings, he never mentions Aristotle, not once. His name was only inserted as a footnote by translators, stating that Aristotle also wrote this. There was an Aristotle mentioned by other Greek writers, but as an admiral in Alexander the Great's navy, and I read that in the Peloponnesian War book I read. The Roman writer, geographer Strabo, his name is better known as Julius Caesar, or Caesar. Strabo was his family name. It also mentions Aristotle, but only as a geographer. Most likely that was the hobby of the admiral they were referring to when he was invading other countries with Alexander. Another Roman writer who mentions Aristotle was Plutarch, and he was one of the pseudonyms of a really powerful Roman aristocrat. All of those Romans just wrote the New Testament and wrote everything you think is right. So Plutarch repeats the same story written by Strabo. Neither writer mentions Aristotle as a philosopher. And at this point, real scholars of Roman history, they know who did this. So the problem is transitioning from the finite to the infinite, to believe that life is more than what we can see and touch and feel and drop, right? That's the problem for our finite minds that want to see and touch it, to be able to approach the infinite, the magic, the mysterious, the consciousness, the connections that we can't see, the vibrations. We have to use our resources. We've taught that infinity can't be understood by a human. We've been taught that those concepts are not for us, but this isn't true. This is an inaccurate picture of reality. We can't understand any basic system until we understand the principle or the foundation or the theory underlying it. Okay, here's a quote from Dr. Lee Smolin, who was a research physicist at Perimeter Institute in Canada. A successful unification of quantum theory and relativity would necessarily be a theory of the universe as a whole. It would tell us, as Aristotle and Newton did before, what space and time are, what the cosmos is, what things are made out of, and what kind of laws those things obey. Such a theory would bring about a radical shift or a revolution in our understanding of nature. It would also have wide repercussions and would bring out or contribute to a shift in our understanding about who we are and who we are in the relationship to the universe. So that's where I'm going to stop for right now. I hope that gives you an idea of where I'm trying to go in following some of Doug's work. And the contents are incredible. What we're doing now is kind of defining the problem and why our philosophies of the past have been inaccurate and ineffective. And then talk about what is our problem. Our problem is trying to understand the universe and who we are in it with the wrong theory. And perhaps by focusing on the right theory, maybe we can begin to understand some of these things. I wanted to end with a list of things that science does not understand. It blew me away. When I started reading and trying to understand, I thought science had a good handle on things. Not at all. So let's see here. I know I have a list. It's a big list. Doug wrote many books, but probably Reality Revealed in '77, where he talked about the informational system of reality or theory of reality. And then he wrote God's Day of Judgment, which was explaining the cycles of our planet and the catastrophes and the great year and stuff like that. Okay, so here's the list of what scientists do not know. Space is curved by large, massive celestial bodies. There was a beginning of the universe we call the Big Bang. We don't know where it came from or what came before the Big Bang, but something can't come from nothing. There has to be a source. 3, we don't know what gravity is. Einstein analogy. It as a form of acceleration in four-dimensional time and space. And his formulas are workable, but not the complete answer. He didn't explain what caused gravity. You can't know what gravity is unless you know what mass is. 4, objects get smaller in gravitational fields and time slows down. Why? 5, whatever matter is, it's made up of waveforms. How? 6, Planck's constant is the ultimate building block of the energy of the universe, but no one knows why. It represents one electrical wave. 7, we do not know why the natural log E exists in our universe. 8, mass and energy are the same, but we don't know why. 9, we don't know what mass is, which is what causes gravity. Without knowing what mass is, it's premature to state what gravity is. 10, what's electricity? What's the electron? What's a black hole? 11, what's light? Is it a particle or a waveform? 12, what's magnetism? 13, what's time? And 14, what is consciousness and life? So our science today doesn't explain that. And there are a lot of reasons for that. They've thought that everything was mathematical, but math is really just a tool to explain something like words, right? Words aren't the thing, they're a description of the thing. And that's what math is, a description of something, but if we don't know what it is, how can we write the description appropriately? And what good is a description if it doesn't explain how to use it, right? There's a lot that we don't know. And it all has to do with our theory. And this is why the religious and political theories have been stuffed down our throats, because if our foundation is what they want us to believe it is, we'll think the way they want us to think. That ain't for me.